Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences from some of the greatest coaches in the world. I'm Michael Kurkowski, so grateful for you joining me today. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to support the show. All right, let's dive in. Here we go.
All right, we are live. Jaime Filer, how you doing?
I'm well. Michael Kurkowski, how are you doing?
Yeah, great to see you again. So
yeah. Great to vibe with you again.
No doubt. Oh, there we go. This is gonna be some good vibes.
Great to
I love it right there.
Energy with you again.
No doubt, absolutely. I had such a good time connecting with you last time when we jumped on. As I said, your energy, not just towards business, but just overall in life, is just so empowering. And I was just so pumped to dive again with you. So appreciate you jumping on again.
Let's go. Let's do it.
No doubt. So a little frame on this was at the end of our last podcast, which if people want to go back, it was episode 235, where it went all into your backstory, how you got into coaching, the inner outer strength system. But we left on a topic that was like, oh shit, I want to dive into this even more, and which was on plant medicine. And specifically going into dosing. And so it's a little bit more niche topic, and I know it kind of expands into a lot of more stuff, but I've had some interesting experiences in my life working with this, and I know you have over this past year. So I wanted to dive into how this has impacted you, kind of how, what were the things that you were hoping for from it, some of the benefits you got out of it, and we'll just kind of roll from there.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Where should we begin?
So I guess to start with, what prompted you to want to explore going into microdosing, going into plant medicine? Was there a specific thought process that you had of like, this is something I was thinking about for a while, or did it just kind of come up? Like, how did that journey begin for you that you wanted to explore this?
So I was training a client in person who was talking nonstop about ayahuasca. He had gone an ayahuasca retreat and his wife was on an ayahuasca retreat, and then they did an ayahuasca retreat with their girlfriend. And I said, and I was asking all about it, and he came back a new man. And I said, that sounds so interesting. And then Katie and I were looking into it, and then I was looking into it, and then I was looking into it with my best friend. And I said, I don't know if I'm ready for what ayahuasca has to offer me. What's like ayahuasca light?
Yeah. What's the low calorie version of this?
Right. What's the Splenda version of ayahuasca? And I had watched a bunch of documentaries on psychedelics and psilocybin. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jeff Black. He's a trainer. He owns, Relentless Coaching Business and Iron House Strength and Conditioning in Nashville, Texas. But he's, touted the benefits of psilocybin for years. And we used to work together and then became friends. And I said, okay, this sounds like what I need for mental clarity and new neural pathways, because I didn't necessarily want, again, what ayahuasca had to offer. I didn't need to go 8 generations back and figure out there was, Gregory grandfather was, some, God forbid, a rabbi who had molested children or something.
Right.
I'm ready for that. But I was ready for, how do I stop ramming my head into a wall?
Okay.
I mean, I was ready to be a little bit better, a little bit more elevated, but not take me out of my body and into like, I don't know, the 1700s.
Yeah. It's, ayahuasca it's now a much more common phrase that people know of with stuff. Yeah. But it is very much like jumping into the NBA when you first learn how to shoot a basketball.
Right. Yes.
That's a powerful, dive into it. But so your thought pattern, you said, was kind of not ramming your head against the wall, kind of like that mental block. Was that something that you were like thinking of for a while? Like, were you looking at other practices or things like, I need to get through something that's going on right now, not sure how to do it, and then this came about?
That was it. And it's not that I'm not a fan of therapy. I would just rather get to the problem sooner than I know therapy does it. And that seemed to be the common theme when I would watch these documentaries or read these articles or listen to these podcasts of people who had tried psychedelics. Honestly, not just psychedelics, like whether it's ketamine or psilocybin, it seemed like they were like, listen, I was working with a therapist for 7 years. and I couldn't get through to this problem, but go into one K-hole and I'm there. That's all it took. And again, I mean, you and I are in a similar field, Michael. We're not here for the quick fixes.
Right.
But it's like, I can get to the root of the problem faster in order to spend the time working on it. So I don't need 800 therapy sessions just to figure out I have a mommy issue. I can take whatever, 1.5 grams and say, oh, I have a mommy issue. Okay, awesome. Now I can spend the next however long working on it, if that makes sense.
So kind of like looking for like just an open door that you can go in and explore.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So I just needed to open the door.
Yeah. It's interesting. I kind of thought the same thing at that time. Like I've heard about this before, and I was like, I did some mushrooms before as a kid, but when you're 16, 17 years old and you're going into it, there's one, thing you're trying to do with it, and it's just to get fucked up. And
That's it, right?
yeah, and it's a blast of a time, but that is a deep dose of it in there.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful. But then I started hearing more about the microdosing for not just the mental benefits, but the physical aspect of it as well. But I talked to some other people who did it and kind of got their experiences as well. Did you talk to anybody who did more of like a microdosing of this? I know you went to documentaries, but did you go to any other people who had real life experience?
I didn't, because I didn't have anyone in my life who micro or mega dosed. Well, other than my friend Jeff. And that was it. But I didn't really ask because I didn't know what questions to ask. I mostly just listened. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you got into it, how did you start? How did you start it? Did you go in with like, I'm just going to take this and see what happens?
Yeah.
Did you set aside time to like kind of get into the feels a little bit more? Like, what was your approach of going into it?
Pretty sure I did it. So Katie and I and our friend group, we love raves. We love EDM music. We love all of that. So I'm pretty sure it started with, listen, I already know that this is a safe, positive environment for me. I already know that I like the people that I'm with. So why not? And we have been using Molly for MDMA for a couple of years. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to swap the MDMA for mushrooms and see how I feel on this dose, and then what my mind does, what my body does, etc., and then go from there.
Okay. What was your experience? What was your experience with the Molly, with the MDMA?
Different beast altogether.
Okay.
And I'm smiling because Molly is the kind of drug whereby as soon as I think about it, I'm taken right back. I'm taken back to how happy I am. I'm taken back to how the music feels. I'm taken back to how touch feels. And it's probably my favorite drug, like by far. Yeah. Yeah.
It takes you back. Can you elaborate on that? Like, is that like goes back into like just good feels that you had before? Like that brings you almost into like good pastimes, or is it more like being just more present and kind of dropping down some of the inhibitions or the anxiety that's going on?
Can everything be true at the same time? So what I like about Molly is that, they say in terms of a fragrance or an odor, that's the relationship that's strongest with memory or nostalgia, right? You smell a scent and then you're immediately taken back there. Because we always do Molly at raves, it's like when I hear a song, it's my sound sense, it's my hearing sense that takes me back to wherever we are. Because again, something about Molly changes my brain in such a way that my pupils dilate and I'm at the rave with my friends feeling incredible again.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's memory's the weirdest thing with the different senses on there. So I know that still, if I smell cucumber melon, I'm right back into 11th grade chemistry class, like when everybody was wearing that one.
Okay. Yes. It's just like that. But picture your favorite DJ and you just get those that's what I'm trying to say. The endorphins come back with the sound. If you hear them with Molly.
Is there a progressive benefit you see with that? Or is it more of like, it sounds a little bit not escapism, but is it more of like, did you see like a benefit from doing that?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm going to write that down. I think
Because I
escapism.
just to put a framework on it, because we're getting into the weeds of some interesting stuff right here.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think, in a context of strength and personal development, I think there's so much good stuff from medicine that you can go into, but
yeah.
also you can almost you can fall on the other side of like using it as that escape aspect as well. So that's why I was just curious about that for you.
Yeah. So I think escapism is a personal choice. I think escapism, you can use, I mean, you can use caffeine for escapism,
Mhm.
right? What are you you're escaping the feeling of just letting your body come down. I think you can use nicotine for escapism. I think everything is relative. I mean, okay, when I think heroin, that's the drug where regardless of your intention, you're probably using it for escapism. But what we've always said about our relationship with drugs is that it's not to escape. I'm really trying to find another word so that I don't keep saying it.
I love it. Yeah. Mhm.
It is to enhance. Our life is good. Drugs enhance, they make it better. If, I mean, Michael, when eventually you spend a week with us or a weekend with us here in St. Pete, you're going to be like, oh my God, I need to move. This is incredible.
Right.
We'll do that sober. And then we'll do it on drugs. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't think it could get better, but here we are.
Mm. Okay, the enhancement is
Yes.
something
Not
I want to go into that more because that was an experience that I had in using psilocybin in there.
yeah.
So going into that, so replacing more of the MDMA and now going into the microdosing,
Yeah.
did you feel an impact on it immediately? Did it take some
Yeah.
time for you to feel like a change or like an adjustment? What was that process like at the
Yeah.
beginning?
So again, if we were to talk about Molly, and okay, I think you and I actually discussed this on our last chat. If the body has, or if the human has four walls, mind, heart, body, and soul, I would say that Molly is more your body and your heart. You're just so open to everything. With mushrooms, I felt my mind and my soul. So it was knocking down different walls for me. Like when I did them at the rave, I felt great. However, I wanted to talk because I'm like, I have so many ideas. This is
Mm,
amazing. I want to go into the weeds about some thoughts that I have.
mm.
Right.
So that
But
was more on the mind side.
yeah. And that
Okay.
again we can use it as a transition to like, what do I use it for now? I use it for my mind. I use it to expand my mind. I use it when I need clarity or have a full day of sales calls.
Mm. So on the other side of the soul, how did it feel for that?
Um, so this is where it can get difficult
Mhm.
because this is where it exposes you. It gives you, it's almost like when you have enough mind, when your brain is open enough, you can see things you haven't seen before, and that makes you feel a certain type of way.
Mm.
Because you can see St. Pete, and then you can zoom out and you can see St. Pete, Clearwater, Tampa, and then you zoom out even more and you see the state of Florida, and you just keep going and going. But now you feel so fucking small. You were a really big deal in St. Pete, but the more you zoomed out, you're like, oh my God, I have so much perspective. I don't know how I feel about this. Give me a second to recalibrate.
Mm.
Yeah.
That can be that can go on two ways, I think. That could go either on a holy shit base mark, but it can also be a very calming type feel as well from there. Did you feel kind of both sides of the coin?
Okay, so this is where we go into dosing.
Yeah.
When I microdose, which for me, and I want to be super clear, again, this is like macros. When someone's like, Jamie, I want to get shredded. What do you eat? And I
Right.
said, I could tell you that. Guaranteed it's not going to do the same thing for your body as it does for mine. So I'm going to qualify this by saying when I tell you what I take, it's not going to be what you take.
Right.
0.3 to 0.35 of a strain that works for me called penis envy. So when I do 0.3 to 0.5, it's calming. It's great. I feel powerful because that's when I take just enough that my questions are better for potential prospects. I have more empathy and capacity to hold space for people if they're coming to me with their problems, whether it's a friend or a prospect. I just have the ability to think more clearly. And I mega dose. So if we're looking at 1.5, 2, I don't think I've exceeded 3. That's when we're like, now I'm an astronaut, buckle in, get ready, because this is, again, where you feel small and shitty.
Yeah. Okay. So did you start with the microdose and do that for a while and then started with the megadose after that?
So I started using about October.
Okay.
Started microdosing. It's a drug. Okay.
I know, right?
About October, and I would say 2 to 3 days a week max, like not usually 3. I wouldn't even say it was, maybe 2 average. And I had a life coach who had an 8-week program that really, it helped teach you how to rewire your brain. So he's an NLP coach, neuro-linguistic programming, and it was really helpful and I learned a lot, but it culminated in this 4-day experience in Austin in January. Okay. So you did 8 weeks of learning, and then he said, we're doing 4 days in Austin and you will be drugged. There will be opiates, there will be ketamine, there will be MDMA, there will be psilocybin, and then there will be a bunch of other things I don't quite remember. But it was a journey. Like it wasn't like a pill party. Like it was who read your energy, who, you talked about what your expectations were and what you wanted out of it. And that was the first time I ever megadosed. Also the last time, because again, I'm still processing everything. So Thursday, we got a whole bunch. Again, speaking of the 4 walls, he would look at you and say, what kind of wall needs to be taken down? And he determined for me, it was my heart wall and my soul. So there was a combination of opiates and MDMA. And then on the second night, it was my body and my mind. And it was mushrooms and something else. So that's when, again, I was small and shitty. So prior to that, the 3 months leading up to it, like Q4, really great. Felt like I was on top of the world. Though I didn't know, like, obviously you don't just hire a life coach if everything's going well. So I knew there were issues, but I still wanted to see what the bigger problem was. So that's why I mega dosed in Austin.
Did that shitty kind of small feeling, did that stay throughout, or did it eventually, evaporate and then go into a better state?
Oh, significantly, because again, this is the beautiful part. It's not like cocaine where you're super hyped for 30 minutes and then absolutely nothing.
Right.
I need it again to get there again. The beauty of mushrooms, and one of the reasons I hope we're talking about this, is because it's similar to like learning how to track your macros. You only have to do it for a period of time, and then you can always like use the framework again. Like you now have a new skill, and that skill is how to think.
Yeah.
So it's expanded your neural pathways. So now when I have anxiety about something, when I feel myself start to retreat into my scarcity mindset, I know, and I'm like, hey, I know how to navigate this. I know what I'm doing. And I also know how to undo it.
That's interesting. I really like that framework of it. I think you can probably break down the difference between using something as an escape and an enhancement is using it as a skill. It's like you need to build the skill just like anything, because just like, I mean, you can count your macros and use that as a great skill, or you can go absolutely nuts on it and you can go into a lot of different, issues with disorders of going on. There's a light side and a dark side to everything from there. So that's why I was curious. I did a lot of microdosing for a bit. Didn't dabble as much in the megadosing, which is something I'm going to do down the line, because that's the person I was, talking to said, you eventually get to a point. It's just like working out. It's like you get to a point where you've built enough strength. You need to up the intensity and you need to go to another level from there.
And even then, I'm hearing of like a hero's journey. And to me, at that point, that's when I've graduated to ayahuasca. Like now I can play in the NBA. Like I'm not going, I mean, maybe I'll go on a hero's journey with the mushroom, but I mean, if I'm the #1 player in the NCAA, like I'm going to get drafted.
Yeah. So
Right.
it sounds like you were in a good mindset, even though there was things that you were, trying to figure out and try and, work out to go to another level in your life. You were already at a good, mindset of approaching this, of getting into this. Like you already had like things that were like you weren't using this as a savior complex, it seems like that. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up from there, because I think a lot of people, they look for things as like a quick shot of this to alleviate something or to get this out, relying on the external thing to, change their biology and their chemistry and stuff. But that's when I think it starts to go into more of the dependency versus, again, if you use it for as a tool to bring you into another level, it's a subtle, but it's a much different, state of how you approach it.
So I think what was different about me is that, number one, I was in a healthy state going into it. Did I know something was wrong? Absolutely. Totally fine. That's good with me. Was I scared of what was going to come out? That's really important to note, because the answer to that is also no. We have friends who refuse to touch any of those kind of mind altering substances because they're like, I don't know what's in here and I don't know what's going to come out. And I think I have a lot of demons. Well, then like you're destined for a bad trip. But I'm like, I don't know what's going to come out, but I'm also not scared of it, because clearly if it needs to come out, it needs to come out. And I better out than in, they say.
Right.
So,
all right. So we got Shrek in the podcast. I absolutely love it.
So yeah, I went into it again, hired a life coach for a reason, knew there were parts of me that needed a lot of work. So I said, let's just, let's go mushrooms. Let's go 10 rounds. I'm here for it.
Yeah. It's a really important point, I think, for approaching anything, specifically in the work that we do in health and fitness. Is so many people get bogged down with the expectations of, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be at this level? Like, what if it doesn't happen at this time? Versus, I'm going to go in this with the best intentions, and whatever happens, I think I'm going to be better at the end, regardless of what happens from there. And it's a much different approach, but that's a lifelong success approach, specifically in health and fitness. And you can adopt it into something like this as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. And again, I want to re-emphasize that it's not something, at least I use every day. Again, similar to Molly, if I can, okay, so I'm using Molly, I'm on MDMA, I'm at a rave, I hear a song by Griffin or Elenium. There's a way to neurally encode how I'm feeling in that moment, so that when I'm in the car and I've had a rough day and I'm 1 out of 4 for sales calls and whatever's happening between me and a friend, I can put on an Elenium song. And again, just like Cucumber Melon, Michael, I can take myself back there without the drug. And that's really important to note, is going back to skill acquisition, right? Can you take yourself back there naturally, sober?
Yeah. So when you applied into microdosing for the day, did you have a specific intention in your mind? Was it more just like, I'm taking this and I'm going to go about my regular day and whatever happens, happens? Like, how did that go?
Now I feel, so now we're almost, I guess I've been using it for maybe 10 months, right? It's mid-July. Now I go in with specific intentions, because I know how I expect how I'm going to feel. So the last couple nights, maybe 3 days over the last week, I have used it intentionally because there's some stuff I want to work through work-wise and in my personal life. So now I'm dabbling in the 0.45 to 0.65 range. And I have like 10 pages of journaling notes, because I need to crack something open, and the new neural pathways are the only ways I'm going to be able to do it. Now, if I don't have anything I need to work on in particular, nothing's really weighing on me, at 9 a.m, I will still take 0.3 if I have 4 sales calls that day, and I will absolutely crush all of them. So now we're at the point where, like, I'm trying to think of something else where you're like, I know where if I take this much, it's going to end up like this. And I know if I take this much, it's going to end up like this.
Okay. So now you understand the recipe for where you want to aim for.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right.
This is an important point, because this was my experience for about 6 months of doing this. I realized that this type of medicine is very good as a turbocharger for whatever you focus on.
Yeah.
And I'll give just a little story on that. So, I was, wanted to see about alleviating some anxiety and like going into another step in, my life. I had some questions that I was trying to answer for not just professionally, but personally as well. And I would go in when I went in with a good intention for the day, I would say like a silent prayer. I would do some journaling right off the bat. It was like it shifted me into the left lane of going a little bit faster or whatever I was focusing on. But then I had one day I remember when I was just like, just taking it pretty much just by routine now, but was super anxious throughout the day and just naturally heightened my anxiety on the day. And I realized that, yeah, this is a good tool, but you better have some sort of intention of why you're using this specific tool at the time. Otherwise, it's just going to bring you down a faster road of what you're trying to avoid or what you're trying to enhance.
Right. And I think what you said about getting into a good mind frame leading up to it also, like if I'm anxious about the 4 sales calls, or if I don't know, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, again, mushrooms aren't just going to magically, right? Like it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you saw it in the mental benefits side. Did you see it in a physical benefits side as well, like with training, with working out at all, with movement?
It's so funny. This is one of those times where I just did a bodybuilding competition, and they ask in the polygraph, because I compete as a natural professional, have you used weed or alcohol in the last 48 hours? And I always think to myself, like, in what world is alcohol a performance enhancer? I think we all know. The only physical benefits, Michael, is I can jump and rave for like 8 hours straight. Like I am the Energizer Bunny. No cocaine, no caffeine, pure, like, like I said, thank you for sharing your energy with me today. You're picking up what other people are putting down. And so the physical benefit is, as long as everyone's in a good mood,
Yeah.
right? You can feel energies, and it's incredible. Yeah.
Physically feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew. Okay.
Right. Which is the other reason you can often see if you're at a rave, people are wearing like full, what do they call? Oh my God, furry hands, or a furry hat, or a lot of people wear pashminas at raves. It's because your tactile sense, your sense of touch is so heightened. So no, I mean, in regards to like, am I leaner? Am I fitter? Are my calves bigger from jumping?
Yeah.
No. I end up dehydrated often, but no, there's no physical benefit that I've noticed from psilocybin, Molly, or ketamine.
Yeah. There is some interesting stuff about mobility increase from it. So I don't know if do you know DJ Murakami? It's us from Strong Camp. DJ's a phenomenal guy, ridiculously strong out in California. And he's done some writing and research on microdosing work for mobility, and showed the difference of people in like toe touch tests from using microdosing versus not. And they think that there could be the mental aspect of it where it releases just a little bit of the fear, because when you stretch and you feel tight, there's this like almost threat detection. This actually eliminates that, which will actually naturally increase your range of motion and your mobility.
Yeah. Interesting.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, that is nuts. Okay. Man, but I wonder if that could apply, like, okay, for example, like I do CrossFit. Obviously, I don't want to side quest on you, but like I know sometimes I'm scared to go upside down because I have this fear, right? Like I'm 36, I'm old. I don't like being upside down. If I was a 7-year-old, I'd probably live upside down. So I'm wondering if it would release some of my inhibitions.
Yeah.
That'd
be an interesting thing just to keep cognizant in your mind on that, because I think a lot of the things is, I mean, that releasing just that little aspect of anxiety and just that stress and that threat that's going on, just flowing that into the body at the same time. So he brought that up on my first podcast when me and Chris did it from there and broke into that. And started looking at that and was doing toe touch tests as I was going through microdosing to see
I
it.
love that.
It's no doubt it's definitely there's something to it. Definitely.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah. So have you talked to other people about like any experiences that they've had like since you've started doing this, like
Now
with doing stuff?
I don't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I talked about this. Katie and I were at a retreat for our business mentorship in December in Scottsdale. And we were talking about the use of social media and honestly, authenticity and people showing up authentically on social media. And I asked the question, I said, listen, if I want to talk about polyamory or my use of psychedelics or anything on social media, like, should I just tell people so that they're not surprised when they hear it from me, when they become a client later, right? Because I am eventually going to come out and just tell them. And they said, yeah, if it's part of your story, you should share that. And Michael, as soon as I started talking about it, people started talking back. And they said, I've always been interested, or, you know, my wife uses it, or we grow our own. And I still was really nervous. Number one, I didn't want to get banned by Instagram, but also I'm like, oh my God, but what are people going to think? And then I realized, taking it back to fitness, psychedelics have been such an integral part of my journey to heal my anxiety that I've actually been doing people a disservice by not talking about it. Like, what if, okay, so we just said you lost 10 pounds since the last time I saw you, right? If you didn't tell people how you did it, or you only said, no, I've been watching what I'm eating, but you didn't tell them you're on a fat burner. You didn't tell them that you've been making it a point to get 10,000 steps and you do 30 minutes of fasted cardio every day. You're doing them a disservice because they're like, damn, all Michael has to do is clean up his eating and he looks like that. And I'm like, you're right. Fuck, I have to tell you that I journal consistently. I have a solid morning routine. I have an evening routine. I do an affirmation every day. I get my workouts in. I follow my macros. Oh yeah. And I do psychedelics. And that's why I'm healed.
That is an interesting point because I think, I think in coaching, it can get very much into, well, everybody's an individual, so I don't want to put out what I'm doing because what I'm doing maybe is not what you're doing, on there. But I didn't actually think of it that way. Like, you're actually doing a disservice by not approaching it with, no, this is exactly what I'm doing right now. It doesn't mean that you need to follow every step that I'm taking and you're going to get exactly what I get, but you might be able to take specific things from it and implement it into your own life.
Right. And great, because someone could say, Michael, I just don't have the time to do my steps and my workout and my cardio. But at least they know that if they wanted to get to where you are, they do have to. But they're like, you know what? I'm cool just with starting steps. I can't do fasted cardio. I don't have any equipment, whatever, but I can do 10,000 steps.
Yeah. It is weird. I mean, it's something like talking about things like plant medicine, MDMA, and stuff like that. Like, I guess, like, I mean, it's still, I don't know if it's as taboo anymore. It's much more, aligned with a lot of people because more people are speaking out about it and realizing that it's incredibly safe in a right structure and getting into intentions. But there still is that, like, should I talk about this or not? Do you think it's just because of like the taboo aspect of it, or because it's like such a personal thing that you do? Like, what do you think that's about?
I think it's the taboo aspect for sure. I mean, I think even now some people are still getting used to like weed being legal.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we just have to be careful. I also think, and this is hard for me to reconcile because I see the deleterious effects of alcohol and how many people black out, but it's no big deal to say that you drink wine with dinner 7 nights a week or 6 nights a week. And then on the 7th night, you're out at a club and you get blackout drunk. Like, people hear about bad trips. People hear about, again, ayahuasca journeys that went wrong. Like, it's almost like everyone still has a bad story about these drugs for now until they realize that no one's doing mushrooms and driving. No one's harming everybody, right? Like, you never got in a bar fight because of Molly. So once people realize,
you might give them a hug and
God forbid. So I think once people realize there's a lot more love than harm, they'll ease up on the gas and the brakes. I also just think, Michael, in 2024, honestly, after COVID, more people are just ready to fight in general. More people are looking for something polarizing. They're looking for something divisive. They're looking for a reason to dislike you. If it's going to be the fact that you take mushrooms and Molly recreationally, then that's the hill they're going to die on.
Yeah. It is funny that alcohol gets a pass for it. It's like it's it's the one drug that if you don't do it, people assume that you have a problem or they need to hear an explanation.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, we can break it down into a million different ways, but alcohol is such a big business. There's so much money that's involved in it. And even now with weed, which is much more open and just, you can go, I mean, there's dispensary right down the street from where I am. You can just go and you can pick it up. I know personally for me, like weed does not work well for me. I turn into like a zombie where I want to just sit and watch comedy shows and like there's no energy at all inside. And I know other people who can get very creative by doing it, and it's actually a very good outlet for them.
Yep.
I found this journey of going into mushrooms as more of a, is this something that can expand me and just open me up with some more clarity on there? But then speaking about it, I did a whole seminar on it, and I've never been more nervous to do a specific seminar than talking about the psychedelics. And it wasn't a big seminar at all, but still I'm like, oh, I'm bringing about something that is like much different from there. And then the feedback that was back from it is like, wow, that was really interesting. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go out and do that right away and just hop up on megadose. But it's like, oh, that's a really interesting perspective. And I think, yeah, the more we do that, the more we just bring out these perspectives of stuff that is working for you. It's probably only a net positive.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, Katie went to it was a cannabis / psychedelic festival last Saturday, and she attended a seminar from I believe he was a researcher, may have been a PhD, talking about ketamine. And she said that he gets a ton of hate from like the mushroom and MDMA camp because ketamine is man-made. So even now, the different psychedelics are fighting each other, which again creates more division. And so now it's become its own. So while I don't know another way of explaining it, but I don't think we need to divide ourselves even more. Like take what you need to take to create space to heal, and there's no right or wrong as long as you're not hurting anyone else.
Yeah. Do you think that one of the benefits of it, specifically probably more on the MDMA side for you, was that there's a community feel to it? You're doing it with other people who are kind of experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I think of as soon as that question finished coming out of your mouth, the first words I thought of were rave fam. Whenever you go to an EDM festival, typically you go with your rave fam, which is short for family. So there's even a name for the friend group that you hang out with, but they're not your friends. In that moment, they're your family. And if you don't have a rave fam, they say you're adopted by a rave fam. So if you go to a festival alone, you're going to come out with a bunch of new friends. You may never talk to them again, but for those 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, afternoon, you have a family.
I think it's interesting. I was thinking of the book. Do you ever read the book by Johann Hari, Lost Connections?
No, but I love him. I read Stolen Focus by him.
Okay. Yeah. His book Lost Connections was all really about depression and anxiety. And one of the chapters I remember was with people from PTSD and stuff getting into psychedelics and plant medicine, and they were doing it in a space where other people were doing it at the same time, and they saw huge benefits of this for overcoming their PTSD. But one of the things about it, that they would take this and then they would talk with the other people around them, like, and they would just share their different experiences and share their different stories. And I think it's such an easy thing to think of, oh, share your story and talk about it with other people because they're going to empathize and sympathize with you. I think it's such a easy common sense thing of be like, yeah, we're social creatures. This is something that you can do and share with other people.
Yeah. And it's crazy that the drug takes us back to where we should be rather, right? This speaks to like, what's your natural inclination? I see you and I want to talk to you. I see you and I want to give you a hug. Oxytocin is a drug that's like ingrained in us to seek, whether you're a baby and you need to be on your mother's chest, or whether you're a human and you just need to be comforted in times of grief or sadness, or a handshake, Michael. Like there's a reason the handshake exists, is because you can feel someone's energy when making a business deal, right? So Why do we need a drug to take us back to what should come naturally?
Yeah. But sometimes some things will just open that door just to bring you back into that path.
And this goes back to the walls. Every drug has a wall. Molly, wall, body comes down. You're uninhibited. You literally dance like no one's watching. Again, mushrooms, mind, wall, done. Let's expand your thinking, like Bradley Cooper in Limitless. So I think that speaks to exactly what you're saying. You have to do a deep dive, set an intention, what wall needs to come down, and then what drug can help you get there.
Beautiful. So, well, it's not a shift, but it's a slight pivot on there. But I do want to ask you just more about anxiety. You work with a lot of people with overcoming anxiety. You've done it a lot with yourself. So in your career and your experience of working with people, what have you learned about anxiety and how it affects us specifically in pursuing more of health and fitness goals?
Yeah, I'm going to receive a lot of flack from this. And I know that this is absolutely, the evidence-based community is going to hate me for this. I think it's man-made. I know that your hormones can shift when you experience anxiety, but look at someone with depression. That's a hormonal and chemical shift, right? Anxiety can be like cortisol going up and down, and maybe progesterone or testosterone going up and down. It is not the black cloud that depression is. So anxiety, friends, give it a rest. That being said, the biggest thing I've noticed is what I figured out is if we exist in the present, anxiety is a mathematical equation that separates you from the middle. So anxiety is you living in the future, and it is the difference between you and the shit that you're projecting that hasn't happened yet. But it's never a fantasy. It's never a good thing. It's negative. It's always a nightmare, right? Or it takes you back. It takes you back into the past, something you cannot change, but it forces you to relive it over and over and over again. I'm going to lower my hand.
Yeah.
So again, if we look at anxiety as a mathematical equation, it is the difference between where you are now and the future or the past. And you have to get yourself out of there. And the only way to do that is to recognize that you're right here, right now.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's future projecting, and you're living in a place that doesn't exist.
Or your past that's already happened. So there's nothing you can change about it. So what's the point?
Yeah. I think anxiety, it's a fickle bitch. It's it's one of those things that there's like a stigma around it where it's like, I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. I think it's just a natural human thing where we'll naturally go into these things. It doesn't mean that you're ever going to fully.
Yeah.
It's kind of like waves in the ocean. Some are going to be bigger, some are going to be lower, but the more you work on it of just, staying in the present, it's more like a calm sea. It doesn't mean that the tides aren't going to shift every once in a while and bring a little bit higher wave that's coming at you, but it's going to crash just as fast as it comes in. You don't need to hold on to that.
Agreed. So two different things here. I made a reel on this recently because to your point, anxiety is a combination of threat management and risk assessment, right? Like you said, it could be that everyone has a baseline level of anxiety because, again, we're not that far removed from our caveman ancestors who needed to constantly scan back and forth for saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths, other predators. Our predators just look a little bit different. It's your mortgage. It's your spouse. It's your screaming kids. It's the way you hate yourself when you look in the mirror. It's alcohol, right? The problem is, though, people see everything as a risk. They see everything as a giant wave that comes crashing over them. It's not like scan, no risk, I'm good for the next little bit. Scan, no risk, I'm okay. Scan, mortgage, I can take care of it. I've $1,000 this month, that's fine. Right? So that's number one. And then the second, so if we just think of it as, risk management or threat assessment, you can overcome it because nothing is going to hurt you as badly as a saber-toothed tiger hurt our ancestors. Not your mortgage, not your spouse, not your social media. It's not TikTok, right? So then the other thing is, Bruce Lee is famous for the quote, "Be like water," right? Have you heard that?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for those who haven't, what he's saying is when you throw a pebble in water, the water reacts relative to the size of the pebble. There's like a little ripple. Water doesn't just not move at all. That would be ridiculous, but it moves enough. When you throw a boulder into the water, or when you human cannonball from the deck into the pool, water ripples relative to the size of the object that you've thrown in. However, in both cases, water recovers. Doesn't matter whether it's a 150-pound man or a pebble, water goes back to being water. Humans, for some reason, again, this goes back to shit already happened in the past and you can't change it. Why are you still reliving that human cannonball? That's anxiety. When you cannot get out of the loop.
That's a beautiful reframe. I never heard it, the analogy of that from Bruce Lee used in that way from there. So how do you work to relieve this anxiety and stay in the present so you don't focus on your cannonballs that you're going in? Is there specific, we talked a lot about plant medicine, but is there routines that you work with? I know you speak out loud affirmations in your morning routine from there. So what are the specific things that you do to keep yourself grounded in this throughout your day?
Yeah. So my biggest thing, have you ever seen the movie? Oh my gosh, Inception.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. You're familiar with it?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Great. You know how the boys each had a totem to determine whether they were in a dream or in reality? And for one of them, it was a top.
The dreidel. Yep.
Yeah, the dreidel. Yeah. Okay. So you need a totem. You need something that brings you into the present. And for me, I figured out in 2020 that it was my Instagram direct messages. And you're like, Jamie, that doesn't make sense. Social media, your phone, like we've been told to stay away from it. Hear me out though. When I'm spiraling on something in the future, something in the past, and I open my direct messages, there is always, without a doubt, there is a question. It can be a question about how I got abs. It can be a question of, will you sell me feet pics? It can be, how do I join your program? But it's always in the present. And I always get to feel significant and valued when I answer that question. So regardless of what's going on around me or what I'm spiraling about, there's someone who needs me on the other end of the phone, and I'm showing up right now for that person, and nothing else matters. And as soon as I inquire and like divert my attention away from the anxiety, even if I did want to come back to it, it's not as severe. I now have a new perspective about it. I took a second, I took a breather.
I love that. I love that there's a specific thing, like you said, the totem. So me and my crew, we call it a flow switch. So it's like you have that flow switch of going from that bound nature avatar that you have, which is the small self, into a specific phrase of switching over into your free nature, which is your strongest self from there. And I like that it's something specific, something physical. You grab something with it so you don't keep it in your own mind. Having something like that that's out there, that's really powerful. So I want to ask you, when you speak, like you speak out loud affirmations from there instead of just thinking them or like writing them down, you speak it out loud from there. How has that affected you in there? Have you seen a real positive response in the work that you do in your day from actually voicing it out into the ether?
Yeah. So my affirmation, and I write this every day on my Instagram and I say it out loud, is today's going to be fucking amazing. And there's something, and my mom isn't a huge fan of my curses, but it always brings a smile to my face because it's so silly and simple. And just saying fucking is like, it's funny. Yeah. It's great. But it's also really powerful too, right? Like that's a powerful curse word, but also it's a powerful, simple affirmation. So not only do I use it in the morning for myself and with myself, but if Katie's feeling some type of way, or if a friend comes to me and they're like, I'm struggling, we'll get through it. And then I'll just send them a text that says, don't forget, today's going to be fucking amazing.
I love that. So a well-placed F-bomb is really powerful in there. Overused, it's like, it gets a little diluted down, but no, I love that because my friend Anthony Flores has a great line. He says, talk to yourself more than you listen to yourself.
Yes.
And I just I just watched the Netflix series Receiver with all the wide receivers from the NFL coming out, the
Yes.
documentary.
Yeah. Okay.
And George Kittle is one of the most interesting people ever. And if you watch that, you see he speaks to himself so much, not just in games, but like just in practice and recovery. Like he's always talking to himself in a positive light and and an affirming way. It seems so trite, and if you start just speaking to yourself, it's going to feel really weird, but it's one of the most powerful things that I've started doing to start my day is actually voicing out loud, speaking during training, actually talking to myself. I can't recommend it enough. So when I saw that that was something that you do, I had to bring it up. I thought that was awesome.
And your brain, I've heard, recognizes the sound of your own voice. Like I've heard of people. So this is a practice that our life coach had us do, is write your own Wikipedia page. Like you don't have to post it, that's fine, but essentially write, but as though as though you're gone. So by the time you finish, like what was your contribution from a philanthropic point of view? Who were you married to? How long were you married? How many kids did you have? What kind of dog? How big was your house? How many jobs? What was your significance? What legacy did you leave? And he's like, bonus points if you record it in a voice note and like listen to it every day, because it's so powerful to hear your own voice telling you essentially what you already know.
Yeah, I love that. So, Jaime, you're fucking awesome. Thank you so much again
Well
for
played,
jumping on.
Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's called a callback. I got it.
Yeah.
No, this was one of the most interesting conversations. I really appreciate you taking time to dive into this stuff. You know, I've seen such an impact in my life from these things that we talked about. I know you have too, and I think other people will as well if they just look at it with, you know, the open mind and really kind of take from it what they need and explore it. I think it's so powerful. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you as always for having me.
No doubt. So, okay. People want to follow you again. What's the Instagram handle?
Jaime, Jaim, and the number 91, Jaime 91. And then Jaime Filer on Facebook.
Beautiful. Till next time. Awesome. Thank you so much, listeners. I'll check you guys on the next one. All right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait. Go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.